Hi everyone, and welcome to my first ever book review video. I have some books here that I'm going to talk about my ratings for them and what they're all about and everything. So I have this stack of books. I'm going to start with this book right here. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. So this is One Dark Window, and I rated this book 5 stars because it was such a good gothic fantasy book. I absolutely loved it. Let me see if it has what it's about on this book. It does. Okay, so this is how the story starts out. It says Elspeth needs a monster. The monster might be her. Elspeth Spindle needs more than luck to stay safe in the eerie, mist-locked kingdom she calls home. She needs a monster. She calls him the Nightmare, an ancient, mercurial spirit trapped in her head. He protects her. He keeps her secrets. And then it keeps going. It's pretty long. I'm not going to read it all, but that's kind of a little synopsis of what this book entails. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the plot was really good for a duology. I feel like I will definitely be reading a lot more from this author, and I really enjoyed this series. And if you are into fantasy, if you really like gothic, dark academia things, then you might enjoy this book. It was my first time reading a gothic fantasy. I've never read a gothic fantasy prior to this, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my take on it, but I also really enjoy dark academia. So there's that book. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is actually Dark Academia. It is A Study in Drowning. This book was so good. It's by Ava Reid. She just released another book. It's going to be officially releasing September the 15th, but it is available for pre-order right now. And I'm going to read the back of this so that you kind of have an idea of what it's about a little bit. It says, but if fairies and monsters were real, so were the women who defeated them. And this book was so good. It's basically 2 characters, obviously a female and a male character, and there is a little bit of a romance trope there, but not really. The main focus is basically the main character, who's a girl. She has these dreams, and she feels like she's going mad, and it kind of goes from there. I'm going to kind of read a little bit of what the synopsis is, but I did rate this book 5 stars as well because I really enjoyed it. So it says, Effie Sayre has always believed in fairy tales, even though crumbling under the pressure of her first term at college, she can't always seem to tell the difference between fact and fiction. Her only solace has been it's very hard to pronounce, but Angahard, an epic from Lyrian national hero and author Emrys Meridian. Taken by chance and maybe fate to the late author's estate, she is intent on finding the purpose to her own story, but instead stumbles upon Preston Hillary, a scholar from the Literature College. So basically they both study at the same university, and then the story just kind of goes on from there. 5-star read. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. This next book is kind of different from what we were just talking about with the dark, gothic, fantasy, and also dark academia reads. This is actually romance, and it's very lighthearted. It's called Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is another special edition. A lot of my books that I keep on my shelves are special editions, but I also keep some that are not special editions. So this one is just a typical romance trope. It is a rom-com, and it is, I rated this book 4 stars. It was very good for a romance. But I'll read a little bit about the synopsis so that you guys can kind of hear what it's about. It says Augustus Everett is an acclaimed author of literary fiction. January Andrews writes best-selling romance. When she pens a happily ever after, he kills off his entire cast. They're polar opposites. In fact, the only thing they have in common is that for the next 3 months, they're living in neighboring beach houses, broke and bogged down with writer's block. So essentially, this whole story is about both of them experiencing the challenges of the everyday world, reality, things like that, but also experiencing challenges within their own careers with writer's block and everything, and they essentially they're coming up with stories for each other to kind of use in their everyday lives and to use in their careers as well. So that's this story. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I was laughing through most of it, and I love Emily Henry. I read almost all of her books. I think there's only 2 that I haven't read, but other than that, I love her as an author. The next book, it is nonfiction, kind of self-help genre. I read a lot of different books, so I don't just stick to one genre. I read a variety of books. This one is called The Psychology of Money. I am 25, so I am still learning and having life lessons going on and everything like that. So I am always open to self-help books and finding better ways to do things, learning how to manage money better, how to budget, things like that. And this book really helped a lot with why we do certain things with money, such as why people will use money towards gambling addictions, why people continue to have gambling addictions, why we go to the store to feel better. For example, I like to go to Target, and it just makes me feel better overall. And the book kind of talks about that and how we use money often as a pacifier in our everyday lives. And I just found it very interesting to read about, and it actually did help me in my personal life with managing money, budgeting, things like that. And at the very bottom here, it says timeless lessons on wealth, greed, and happiness. And a little bit of the synopsis on the back says, doing well with money isn't necessarily about what you know, it's about how you behave, and behavior is hard to teach even really smart people. So basically this book, it even talks about it at the beginning, it's not for people who are looking for statistics and numbers and things like that. It's more so focused on the psychology behind money and why we do certain things with money, and how it plays into society and the economy and things like that too. So I really found this very interesting. I rated this book 5 stars because it was just so good, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about society as a whole too. This next book, this is the last of my book copies. The rest of them I'm going to show you are on my Kindle. I read a lot more on my Kindle than I do the books, unfortunately. I know that a lot of people have some opinions about that, but personally I like to save money on books, and so I buy a lot on my Kindle, just because typically the only time that I like to keep the book is if I really enjoyed it, or I have the special edition, or I learned a lot from the book, or I really enjoyed it, or something like that. And so a lot of the books that I own are 5-star books, 4-star books, things like that, that I really want to keep on my shelf, just because I really enjoyed it and I might want to reread it. But a lot of the times I'm not one to reread books, so I don't mind. For example, if my licensure for the book gets taken away, it really doesn't bother me that much. I know that that's kind of controversial, but that's kind of my opinion on it. I just read it one time, so it doesn't bother me. So this last book of the book that I have was a 5-star read. If I could give 10 stars, I would. I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. It's Babel by R.F. Kuang. This author is so intelligent, so smart. She did so well with this book. She also wrote the Poppy War trilogy, and that is actually on my TBR. I have not read that yet, but I'm definitely going to read it, and I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be reading it here in the next few books that I have already planned out. So this book is a dark academia. It was focused on one main character. He's male. And I'll just read the back of it for you guys so that you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. It says Oxford, 1836. The city of dreaming spires. It is the center of all knowledge and progress in the world, and at its heart is Babel, Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, the tower from which all the power of the empire flows. Orphaned in Canton and brought to England by a mysterious guardian, Robin Swift, thought Babel a paradise until it became a prison. But can a student stand against an empire? So this was really, really good. I don't even know how to describe it. It changed my perspective on a lot of different things. The main character is studying language at Oxford. And so this book hits a lot of different kind of controversial topics, talks about racism, language, culture differences, and how manipulation can play a role if you have power, things like that. And so it hit a lot of different topics, and I think that the author did a wonderful job with that, and really making sure that her point is taken all the way to the finish line. I really enjoyed this story. It was so good. I cried through a lot of it because it's just so, you can just feel the main character's pain so much, and it's just so good. I mean, I think this is the best dark academia book that I've ever read. I really enjoyed it. It definitely above 5 stars. I don't have much else to say about it, but it was just so good. If you haven't read this book yet, definitely give it a try, especially if you love dark academia. This is so good. And if you are new to dark academia, this is a good place to start because she really sets up the story for you, and it's a good introduction into dark academia as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get into my Kindle editions. So I'm going to go grab my Kindle, and then I'm going to show you the cover and just kind of talk about it as well. Okay, so for the books that are actually on my Kindle, the first one I'm going to go ahead and talk about is called Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. I don't know how to say his last name, but this was such a good story. This is a non-fiction story, and it's based on a male main character. This story actually did happen to a hiker, unfortunately. His name was Christopher Johnson McCandless. I wanted to make sure I looked down to say his complete name. But this man, back in the 90s, did go to Alaska. He had plans to go to law school, but he decided to go ahead and move from California, from law school, and go out to Alaska to make it out in the wild and just start living off the land because he was so tired of his time in California. And so the story mainly just hits on his side of the story. The author did a wonderful job of making sure that he includes all sides of it. He did interviews with people that knew him. He had witness statements, things like that, in his death. He included lots of details about before his death and things that maybe could have happened to cause him to die while he was in Alaska, and it was all around a very good story, and it kind of hit a little bit to me similar to a thriller type story, just because it moves very quickly. You kind of know what's going on, like what's going to happen at the end, and so it's very heartbreaking, but also kind of scary because it could happen to anyone really. What happened to him? There are a lot of different theories that he talks about, with people saying he just starved to death, that he did whatever, he was dumb, he just went out there and tried to do things on his own. But really, whenever the author deep dived into those topics, he found that, you know, something else was very true. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but something at the end is very much true, and kind of disproves all of those theories, and I just found that to be very interesting. And for the book that I just talked about, I did rate it 4 stars, but this next book that I'm going to be talking about is Palm Lake by Ann Patchett. This one I actually read through Audible. I did not read it on my Kindle. I just have it on here on my Kindle, but I did listen to it. This was such a good story. It was performed by Meryl Streep, so that kind of says a lot. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, because I listened to it. I could see how some people might find it a little bit boring, just because it is kind of describing, it's a fictional character, but more in a memoir sense, and so the main character is told through the lens of kind of like she's reflecting on her younger self and her past experiences, past lovers, things like that. She talks about her roles in theater and how that led to her playing a role with this other man, and kind of their love story, and how she ended up with her current husband, and her children are wanting to hear about her past experiences, so she's kind of telling her children about her past experiences, but you feel more like one of her children whenever she's describing her experiences and everything. And the way that the author describes the main character's story is just so like melancholy and bittersweet, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like it actually taught me a lot about life, and gave me a lot of experiences to kind of pull from, and I feel like a lot of what she writes about kind of compares reality to theater, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, just because I'm not very familiar with the theater role, and I'm not very familiar with acting or Hollywood or really anything like that, and the author really does a deep dive into being a theater kid and what kind of goes into that, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So that story I ended up rating 5 stars because it was just so good. I really enjoyed it. Some people might find it a tad boring just because she's talking about her past experiences. Some people, it's not really their cup of tea, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning more about the characters, relationships, past experiences, things like that. I really enjoyed it. This next book that I'm going to be talking about, I also listened to. So this book is called Remarkably Bright Creatures. I know that now it's a Netflix movie. I have not seen the movie yet. I need to because I really enjoyed the book. But this is essentially the point of view from an octopus, and he is watching this human on her everyday life, and he stores away different treasures, and one of the treasures that he ends up storing away is something that she's lost, and it's so cute, and I just love it. The ending was so good. I loved the ending. I don't know, I don't have much else to say about it. I did rate it 5 stars just because it was so cute. I just loved the story, and I loved how creative the author was with having an octopus as the main character and coming up with maybe some inner monologue of what an octopus might be thinking about someone and kind of personifying them into more of the type of inner monologue that we have as people, and I really found that so cute and so interesting. So it is written by Shelby Van Pelt, and I really enjoyed it. It was so cute. I highly recommend this book. This last book that I'm going to be talking about is so bittersweet. I loved the story, but it was so heartbreaking, so sad. It completely ripped out my heartstrings. It's called So Be It, and I never hear anyone talk about this book. It's not popular, but it was so good. It was recommended to me by a friend. It's called So Be It, Just Like This by Sarah Weeks, and it's a very short story. I believe it's like 200 pages-ish. I listened to it, and the narrator was really good that I found on Audible. It talks about mental disorders and how challenging it can be for a child to grow up with a mother that has mental issues and is on the spectrum, and kind of struggles with finances and the struggle that the child can go through. And it's just such a good story because it really puts things in perspective. Whenever I would read this on a hard day, it really put things in perspective for me, and it made me realize that, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are going through a lot of different struggles that are very different from mine, and I find it very important to remember that the fortunate experiences that we have, and that not everyone has those, and we need to be grateful for what we do have because not everyone is as fortunate. And it's just such a good story, and I would recommend this book to everyone. It was a 5-star read for me. I highly recommend it. This book will absolutely destroy you, but it was such a good story, and I'm so glad that I read it, and I think that everyone should read this book because, again, it just puts things in perspective, and it really kind of humbles you as a person, and it makes you realize that, you know, the things that you're going through is definitely not as bad as what other people are going through, and you need to be grateful for what you do have and not just simply look at the negative experiences, but focus on the positive, because that's what the main character does in this story, and it's so good. And especially since it's written with this younger child that doesn't really understand what's going on, with her point of view, it's just so good, and I just really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Now, the current book that I am reading right now, I kind of have mixed emotions about this book so far. I'm almost halfway through it, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it yet. It's called Heart the Lover by Lily King. It is a very popular story. Lots of people love it, but also a lot of people hate it. It's kind of like you either love it or hate it situation, I've noticed. Right now, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like so far, I don't really know. but that's kind of what I'm reading right now. I'm also halfway through the last book of the Harry Potter series. And that's pretty much it right now. So those are the 2 books that I'm reading right now, and I look forward to talking more about stories and cozy things, and we'll talk to you guys later.